right-wing Israeli coalition government under Benjamin Netanyahu mean for the Palestinians? The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has made moves recently to win international backing for his cause, particularly through the United Nations. Will this strategy help or hinder their aspirations for statehood? My guest today is the Palestinians' veteran chief negotiator, Saeb Erekat. Can they isolate Israel and achieve recognition of a Palestinian state through international diplomatic channels? Saeb Erekat in Ramallah on the West Bank, welcome to Hard Talk. You have described in a recent statement the new Israeli government as racist and discriminatory. Is that helpful?
Well, I was describing the truth, Zeinab. I was describing the reality, and ignoring facts don't mean they don't exist.
You've got to work with this government, haven't you? And you're being urged by your international partners, Federica Mogherini, the EU foreign policy chief, the new UN Middle East envoy. They're all saying to you, look, you've got to engage with the Israelis. You can ignore them?
No, I can't. I'm not ignoring that. No one benefits more from the success of peace and negotiations with Israelis more than Palestinians. And no one stands to lose more in the absence of peace and negotiation from the Israelis more than Palestinians. The question today, is the government of Israel willing to engage on the basis of a two-state solution on the 1967 lines? I have, as a Palestinian, recognized the state of Israel right to exist on the 67 borders. I want to engage in negotiations to achieve the delineation of my border with Israel on the 67 lines. But the Israeli government, a prime minister who tells me the Palestinian state is not on my watch. In 1 week of his government, he issues more than 2,000 housing units of settlements in occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank. They're moving their offices, his ministers, to occupied East Jerusalem. And today, literally speaking, there are buses in Israel that Palestinians cannot use. They call it sterilized buses, and there will be roads that they call it sterilized road.
Be that as
and
it
you
may.
know, if this is...
OK, be that as it may, the Israeli negotiator Silvan Shalom says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel want negotiations with the Palestinians. So what are you going to do? You're going to refuse?
I need to know the agenda of my negotiations. I'm not going to go and discuss with Silvan Shalom Alaska or, you know, something in Ukraine. I know I have an agreed agenda with them, signed by Israeli government, saying that the permanent status negotiations issues are borders, Jerusalem, settlements, water, security. Is Mr. Netanyahu willing to utter the sentence two states on the 1967 lines? That's the question to him. Is he willing to sit with me and delineate the borders? Is he willing to carry out his commitment, not condition, to stop settlement activities in the land that's supposed to be the state of Palestine? These are the questions that are put to him.
Are these questions, Saeb Erekat, or are they conditions that you are setting out before you resume negotiations? If so, spell out what those conditions are.
I don't have any conditions whatsoever. What is between me and the Israelis are elements of contracts, agreements signed. There are obligations emanating from these agreements signed on me as a Palestinian and on Israel. And Israel must stop settlement activities and must accept two states on 1967 lines and must accept to sit with me to delineate the borders on the basis of the 1967 lines. Right, if they're willing to honor their commitments, we'll meet tomorrow.
All right, well, meet tomorrow, because according to the Israeli press reports now, Mr. Netanyahu wants to sit down with President Abbas to discuss the border of West Bank settlement blocks. You know that that's been reported in Haaretz and elsewhere in the Israeli press. So you said you're ready to sit down tomorrow. So what is your position? You're going to talk about the West Bank settlements?
Zeinab, settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are illegal settlements. Actually, in accordance with the Fourth Geneva Conventions of 1949,
yes.
These settlements are war crimes. Now Netanyahu, I saw the statement today, the news item in Haaretz newspaper, is inviting us to sit with him to delineate the borders of the settlements. So what he literally wants me to do is to legitimize his illegal settlements. What's between me and Mr. Netanyahu? I should sit with Mr. Netanyahu, if he accepts, to delineate the borders of the two states and not the borders of his illegal settlements, so he can legitimize the illegal settlements by a Palestinian decision and an international decision. This is absolutely, I don't have a neon in my forehead saying stupid to accept such offers.
You know, Martin Indyk, who stepped down as US envoy last year, said in April last year, neither side has the stomach to make the necessary compromises. He has a point, doesn't he?
No, I think this is unfair. Look, Zeinab, I'm telling you now to your program. I recognize the state of Israel's right to exist on 1967 lines. I'm willing to sit with them if they carry out their obligations, no conditions whatsoever. I'm yet to hear one member of this Israeli government who's willing to say, I accept the state of Palestine on the 1967 lines. So if you can come and say that this is fair to say that neither side has the stomach, it's unfair. I've recognized Israel. I'm waiting for Israel to say they recognize the state of Palestine. Even when I go to the UN, Zeinab, to say I want a resolution specifying that the state of Palestine will live side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security, Israel takes to arms.
But you
so
know,
Netanyahu wants to fight us all over.
But Mr. Netanyahu has said he accepts the two-state solutions when the right conditions prevail. He qualified the statement that he made before the elections in March, which created all the controversy when it seemed the case that he wasn't accepting of the two-state solution. He says he does.
Well, Mr. Netanyahu said openly in the election campaign, and I think it was one of the moments of his honesty, that a Palestinian state is not on my watch. He committed to continue settlement activities in the occupied West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. So I believe that Mr. Netanyahu's end game here is to have not two states, but one state, two systems. He wants greater Israel, and within this greater Israel, there is what he called the respected Arab-Palestinian minority that should have civic, and economic rights. If he wants to sit and engage in serious negotiations, let him put his money where his mouth is.
All right.
Let him say to you, to the world, that he accepts two states on the 1967 lines. We cannot say nation states without borders. Imagine if each state in the world say it's disputed areas and I don't have a border and we need to annex.
We know this. We know this, Saeb Erekat, and of course, as you say, international law says that the settlements are illegal. The European Union said in May this year that Israel's determination to continue its settlement policy calls into question its commitment to a negotiated agreement with the Palestinians. We know this. You've just reiterated that. But the point I'm making to you is when the new UN Middle East envoy, Nikolai Mladenov, says that he will engage with Israel's new government to explore realistic options for a return to talks, both sides must show historic leadership and personal commitment to peace and negotiations. What do you say to your fellows in the international community? What will the Palestinians say? We know what you think about the Israelis.
Well, I think President Abbas met, and myself, we met with Madam Federica Mogherini. We met with Mr. Mladenov. We met with the Norwegian foreign minister. We're in touch with all the European Union and the Americans, and they know our positions. We're willing to engage seriously on the basis of the agreed terms of reference specified in the quartet's statements, saying that negotiation should be on the basis of two states on 1967. Mr. Mladenov, Federica Mogherini, Mr. Kerry, they have no problem with the Palestinian side, full commitment to this. Do they have an Israeli prime minister, minister, chief negotiator who's willing to say that Israel is willing to engage with Palestinians on the basis of a two-state solution on the 1967 lines? This is the agenda. This is one simple sentence.
Mm-hmm. Can I put this point to you, which Dennis Ross, the former US chief negotiator for Arab-Israeli issues from 1993 to 2001, somebody you know well, he said this year that Palestinian political culture is rooted in a narrative of injustice. Its anti-colonialist bent and its deep sense of grievance treats concessions to Israel as illegitimate. That's a kind of philosophical point he's making there. What do you think of that?
I don't disagree with such philosophical points. These people are my occupiers. And you know, the relationship between anyone on this earth, your employer, your neighbor, your wife, your husband, is based on one single word, F-A-I-R, fair, fair. What the Israelis need to understand is without fairness in this relationship between Palestinians and Israelis, we're doomed as Israelis and Palestinians. We're offering them to live and let live. We recognize them to live in peace and security on the 67 borders. That's 78% of historic British mandated Palestine, and accepted to establish our state in the remaining 22% of the land. Now grievances, we are free to grieve. We are free to be emotional. But we're speaking at the end of the day at realism. See, in my opinion, Christian and Muslim Palestinians will not convert to Judaism and become Israelis. Jews will not convert to Islam and Christianity and become Palestinians. So our option is a two-state solution on the 1967 lines.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Netanyahu and his government, Zeinab, if you allow me to finish this sentence, they are determined to undermine the two-state solution by the continuation of the settlement activities. I'm telling them, you may succeed. Can you walk me through the day after? What do you see? What do you see between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean?
Okay, then can I say, have you given up hope of having proper peace negotiations with the government, this new Israeli government under Netanyahu? Have you given up hope?
No, I will never. No. I can't give up hope. I can't give up hope because I believe at the end of the day there will be two states, the state of Israel living side by side, the state of Palestine in peace and security on the 1967 lines. What I'm saying is that this Israeli government is refusing to commit to the two-state solution.
Okay.
This is why I'm seeking to tell Palestinians, please avoid violence. Don't resort to violence. Stay with us. Stay the course. Through the international law, through the UN, Security Council, Geneva Conventions, ICC, we shall deliver you as Palestinians to your independence, freedom.
Okay, let me ask you about that. Then you've just set out the ICC, the International Criminal Court, through the UN system and so on, because in 2012, when the UN General Assembly voted to upgrade Palestinian status to that of a non-member observer state, it meant that you Palestinians could apply to join international bodies like the International Criminal Court as a way of bringing about pressure on Israel. Do you believe that this strategy will deliver you a Palestinian state through international diplomacy rather than through direct bilateral talks with the Israelis?
It's not at the expense. It's not one contradicting the other. It's complementing the other. The fact that Palestine became and has gained the legal status of an observer state meant that it's a state under occupation. The West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem is identified now as a higher contracting party to the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949. Palestine is a member of the ICC, International Criminal Court. Palestine has a status of a state under occupation like what countries like Norway, Belgium, Holland, France, Korea, the Philippines were under the Second World War under the German and Japanese occupation.
Sure.
So the Israelis cannot say it's disputed territories. Yes, we have the means to access now and to make accession to 523 conventions, articles, organizations, agencies of the UN, and we're telling our people, please avoid violence, don't despair, stay with us on this line. But that doesn't contradict the fact that we need to negotiate. That complements negotiations.
You say it complements negotiations, but you know that the Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu and many others have said that these measures that you've taken to try to put pressure on Israel through, for instance, you're joining the International Criminal Court in April, is counterproductive. And there are even those Americans like Martin Indyk who say, actually, look, this is not going to be conducive to getting the Israelis back to the negotiating table in any meaningful way. So you say it's complementary, but it's not, is it?
Zeinab, I'm telling the Israelis, if you worry about courts, stop committing crimes. I'm not fond of going to courts. But you cannot, I'm a small people with very small energy. I cannot have every 2 years 12,000 Palestinians killed and wounded in Gaza. I cannot have the continuation of the settlement activities, bypass roads, now they call it sterilized roads, sterilized buses. I cannot continue living a deeper apartheid system in the West Bank and East Jerusalem than the one that existed in South Africa. So what I'm telling the Israelis, wake up, wake up. What you're doing in the West Bank in accordance with the international law, the 4 Geneva Conventions and the 4th Geneva Conventions of 1949 are war crimes. And if you worry about courts, don't commit crimes.
Well, of course, as Benjamin Netanyahu himself said, that you're joining the ICC works both ways, and that also Palestinians who they believe to be guilty of war crimes or crimes against humanity and so on would also be subjected to that. But the point I'm making to you is this. You say it's complementary. Let me put to you what the US State Department spokesman, Jen Psaki, said on the 5th of January this year. It is counterproductive, your move to go to the ICC, and does nothing to further the aspirations of the Palestinian people for a sovereign state. It badly damages the atmosphere with the very people with whom the Palestinians ultimately need to make peace.
Well, to Madam Baski and others in the U.S., I would say I've been staying the course with you, shoulder to shoulder, with the U.S., America, Russia, the Quartet, the international community, peacefully and negotiations after negotiations in order to achieve the two-state solution. In 1993, Zeinab, we had 200,000 Israeli settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Today, we have 650,000. I need the international community to stand shoulder to shoulder with me in order to stop Israelis from torpedoing the two-state solution, to preserve the two-state solution. And one of the means available to me are the measures and the conventions like the ICC, like the Security Council, because I want to preserve the two-state solution.
All right, let's talk about the Security Council, because the French have now proposed a Security Council resolution setting a framework for negotiations. Plan, for instance, includes an 18-month deadline for completion of the talks leading to a Palestinian state. And the French have said if there is no agreement, France would recognise a Palestinian state. We've seen similar kind of moves in European parliaments, Sweden, Ireland, Spain, the UK, saying that they would recognise Palestinian statehood. Do you put a lot of faith in that strategy? You think that's going to really deliver for you, and soon?
Yes, I really believe in this strategy. I really believe that the international community must support such a resolution. Today there is an Arab committee composed of Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Palestine, and the Arab League Secretary General, who engaged the French and others. And I hope that the British government would adhere to what the vote in the British Parliament was, to accept a Palestinian state. And those who say that they accept two-state solution and they recognize the two-state solution and they want a two-state solution, they must recognize two states and not one state.
All right.
So I urge Britain, France, Germany, and all the European Union to recognize the state of Palestine, to live in peace and security next to the state of Israel and the 6-7 lines, and this will help preserve the two-state solution.
So what about the Americans? You just mentioned the Europeans there. You see them as your main allies now. Americans, of course, give you, what, $400 million in annual aid?
I have no quarrel with the Americans. I'm dealing with the Americans. They are the main sponsor for the negotiations. And I'm telling you very, very frankly, Zeinab, President Obama and Mr. Kerry have invested everything they have in preserving the two-state solution.
Do you see any movement?
The one who undermined...
Yeah. So you've made that point. I want to ask you about the Americans. Do you see any movement there? Because we saw in March how Josh Earnest, the White House spokesman, said after the comments that Prime Minister Netanyahu made, he said now our ally in these talks has said they're no longer committed to that solution, the two-state solution. That means we need to re-evaluate our position in this matter. There were those who interpreted this in the press as meaning that the Americans, when it came to a vote in the Security Council at the UN, might abstain rather than veto. That was speculation. What's your view?
Well, Zeinab, I think this American statement came in response to Netanyahu's statement that the creation of the Palestinian state is not on his watch. That's to be precise and accurate.
Yes.
And secondly, we welcome an American re-engagement in the peace process. We know that the Americans now are focused on Tehran on 30th of June, what will happen with this agreement, which we fully support, by the way, because we don't need any more wars in this region, and we believe in dialogue, and we believe that dialogue and negotiations can result in peaceful negotiation more than wars and violence. And we have every evidence that President Obama, I've heard him personally, and I heard Mr. Kerry to me, telling me that creation of the two-state solution or Palestinian state to live side by side the state of Israel is a paramount American interest. So I really need the international community to gather forces. When we speak about Europe, we're not saying instead of the Americans, we're saying no. Europeans, Russians, Americans, UN, Arabs, everyone in the international community want to achieve the two-state solution. And we hope that they convince the Israeli government of accepting the concept of a two-state solution on the 1967 lines.
You say two-state solution, but of course, there is this idea of a one-state solution being bandied around. And didn't you yourself say in 2009 at a press conference reported in Reuters that you said in the light of the continuation of the settlements, the two-state solution is no longer an option. It's time to refocus attention on a one-state solution where Muslims, Christians and Jews can live as equals. And there are influential Palestinians, Diana Bhutto and, others who say, look, perhaps a one-state solution is more viable.
Zainab, I'm not a fan of the one state. There is no such a thing as a one-state solution. A solution requires two parties, and Israel will never accept a two-state solution. So my option
one-state solution, you mean? You mean Israel will never accept a one-state solution?
Yeah,
is that what
there
you
is no
say?
such a thing as a one-state solution. There is a one-state reality. In 2009, I said that Israel continuing its settlement activities, its apartheid, roads that are not allowed being used by Palestinians, is only leading to a one-state reality, and that's bad. That's bad. The only option for me, as a person, as an individual, as a Palestinian mandated by his leadership, to achieve a two-state solution, to live and let live.
But there's an internal debate. There's an internal debate, isn't there, amongst Palestinians? You had in 2012 former Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Ghorey saying a binational state, a one-state solution, is one of the solutions that we should be contemplating through internal dialogue. Is that dialogue still alive?
It's gaining. I have to be honest with you, Zainab. Those in Palestine who doubt our ability to achieve the two-state solution are on the rise. Those who are discussing or debating the idea of a one-state solution or violence is on the rise. And this is why we need all those in the international community who still believe in saving lives of Israelis and Palestinians, who believe in the two-state solution as the only option, to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in order to preserve and maintain the two-state solution.
So are you saying that there's a real threat of violence? Because, of course, here in the Guardian newspaper in the UK, there was a leaked EU report in March this year which talks of a dangerous boiling point in Jerusalem in particular, a situation of polarisation and violence, a wave of attacks by Palestinians. We've seen surveys from the Palestinian Centre for Policy and Survey Research say 74% of Palestinians favour the Hamas way of resisting occupation, i.e. through violent means. Are you honestly saying that that is a path that is seriously on the rise now?
Well, when Mr. Netanyahu said the Palestinian state is not on my watch, to the minds of Palestinians, he was telling them, don't listen to Saeb Erekat, don't listen to Mahmoud Abbas, don't listen to the Palestinian moderate camps who are telling you that you will achieve a Palestinian state through peaceful means. And that's why we lost the elections in Bir Zayt and we stand to lose more. That's the reality. But against all hope, I'm urging Palestinians to avoid violence, to stick to us going to the international organizations, UN, Security Council, ICC, to preserve the two-state solution. I believe void of violence, we stand much more chances to achieve our goals than anything else. But I have to agree with all these reports that I've been reading and studying very, very carefully, that at the end of the day, if people like me cannot deliver peacefully the two-state solution, it's really a situation out there that I cannot even start projecting. It's a very difficult situation. And the last thing you want to do with Palestinians is to take them into the path of desperation, because desperation would lead to desperate acts.
Briefly and finally, what about a third non-violent intifada? Ghadour Faris, chairman of the Palestinian Prison Society, said that we need a crisis to end the crisis and that a third non-violent intifada may be the way. Do you agree?
Well, look, the Palestinians have the full right to a peaceful resistance, non-violent resistance. But I really believe that the Palestinians should gather their efforts into building their institutions, into entrenching their democracy, human rights, accountability, transparency, women's rights, the rule of law, to tell the international community that bringing Palestine back to the map would mean an asset to the international community, to international and regional peace.
Saeb Erekat, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.